Welcome everyone to another week of Ramban ala Parsha. This week we have the zchus of reading Parshat Chayei Sarah. And Chayei Sarah is a bit of an odd Parsha in that it's dominated by the story of Eliezer finding a wife for Yitzchak, which repeats many times, and there are lessons to be learned from that. But it's just a story. And the first part before Eliezer is basically the story of Avraham buying a burial place for Sarah. And as you read it, you get the sense that there's more going on in that story than is on the surface, right? The give and take between Avraham and the Chittim and Avraham and Efron. It seems like something more is going on, and the Ramban is completely clued into that. And so, at the very beginning of the Parsha, Avraham says to the people surrounding him, right? Vayakam Avraham me'al pnei beito vayidaber al bnei chet lemor. What does he say to them? Ger v'toshav anochi imachem tenu li achuzat kever imachem ve'ekbera meitim milefanai. It's a strange phrase, ger v'toshav. They're not antonyms, but they're certainly not synonyms. So what does he mean? So the Ramban right there says as follows. Haya haminhag lihiyot lahem batei kvorot ish leveit avotav. Right? The minhag was, in the South in the United States is certainly the case, there are, to have a family burial plot. And that's where the parents and the brothers and the siblings and their children, they're all buried there. V'sadek fura echad yikberu po kol hagerim. And, okay, there's the family burial plots. And then there's one big cemetery where people who don't belong to the important families, they get buried there. Strangers get buried there. People who died by accident in the town. I mean, everybody dies by accident, I suppose. But people who die and they don't really belong, so they're buried in the big cemetery in the potter's field, I think people say in English. Vihine, he says, Avraham amar el b'nei chet, ani ger me'eretz acheret. Right? I'm a stranger. I wasn't born in Hebron. I didn't grow up here. I don't have a family burial ground here. Right? I'm new. On the other hand, says Avraham to the Bnei Ches, this is where I'm going to live. This is my place for the future. This is where I plan to live. So at some point, I have to transition from a ger to a toshav. And this is a good time for me to do that. V'lachein tenu kever lihiyot li la'achuzat olam ke'achad mikem. I want to have a burial plot to be like all the families in Hebron. And I have a burial plot, and that's where my family will be buried, and people will know this is where I belong. It's strange that that's actually how it played out. It's not just a burial plot. It's Marat HaMachpelah. But says the Ramban, that's what Avram's looking for. Umipnei she'amar tenu, because Avram said give, chashdu shebikesh otam mehem b'matana. The people assumed that Avraham was kind of demanding a burial plot and that he wasn't going to pay for it. Nevertheless, va'anu oto, you may see yourself as a stranger, but we don't see you that way. We see you as one of us. It's not just that you're one of us. You're a king. Right? Really an amazing thing. Avraham very humbly says to the people, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem. And says the Ramban, they answered, no, you're not. You're a melech aleinu. We know who you are. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has made you nobility. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has made you great amongst us. You deserve to take whatever burial plot you want. V'yelech alachuzat kever la'olam. Ki ish mimenu lo yimna'ehu mimcha. We're not going to stop you. Tell us what you want and we'll give it to you. Now, it doesn't really play out that way because Efron, gets money for the field. And it could be that even Efron would have been happy for Avram to just take the field. But Avram Avinu says, no, I want to pay you. But what's going on here, you get the sense, is that not just Maaseh Avot Siman Labanim, but it's coming true. even in Avraham's lifetime. He's saying to them, I'm just a stranger. And they're saying to him, no, you're not. You're a king. You're a noble person. You're a person we respect. And we want you to make a burial plot here. We want this to be the place for your family. And that's exactly what Avraham wants. And so they make the deal, and Avraham lives amongst them. But the idea of a family burial plot is something, I think we've lost it a little bit. My father-in-law's family, my father-in-law's Zichron Levrach and his family, they're all buried in Sanhedria. It's a small cemetery, but it's very beautiful. And I'm more aware of it now because later on, after my father-in-law was buried there, and we've been there many times, Rav Ovadia was buried maybe 50 meters from him. And all these people offered my mother-in-law, she should live and be well, money, like a massive amount of money for her plot. Because to be buried near Rav Ovadia, but I think to be buried amongst my father-in-law's family is a big deal. So they have a family burial plot. And finally now, Avraham purchases for himself a family burial plot. Now, having said that, after he buys it, the Torah says as follows. Pasuk Yutet, the Torah says, V'acharechein kavar Avraham et Sarah ishto el me'arat sidei ha'machpelah al penei mamrei hi Chevron be'eretz Canaan. A lot of details, a lot of maybe unnecessary details, certainly be'eretz Canaan. And don't we know that it's in Eretz Canaan? So says the Ramban, Ki shav lebe'er hasadeh v'hamakom v'ha'aretz. The Torah comes to explain and to describe exactly the place and the land. Ba'avur ki kol ha'parsha hizkira b'nei Chet ve'Efron achiti. Right? In the discussion, they just keep talking about the Chitim and Efron, and it sounds like it could be taking place in Chutz La'aretz. Lefikach hizkir b'sof Kihu be'eretz Canaan asher hi Eretz Yisrael. Right? Anytime you see Eretz Canaan, you know that it's Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Canaan turns into Eretz Yisrael. V'chein amar b'tchilat ha'parsha b'kiryat arba hi Chevron be'eretz Canaan. To make sure that people understand that Sarah was buried in Eretz Yisrael. Ulefi da'ati. Now, it's an interesting thing. The Ramban wrote almost the entirety of his Perush ala Torah in Spain. But as we all know, at the end of the Ramban's life, he was quote-unquote exiled to Eretz Yisrael. He lived the last 2.5 years or 3 years of his life in Eretz Yisrael. And from Eretz Yisrael, the Ramban sent back additions to his Perush ala Torah. Many of them are geographic. Right, when we get to where Rachel Imenu was buried, the Ramban had a certain theory, and then he comes to Eretz Yisrael and he sees that it's wrong. And there the Ramban says, I see that it's wrong. But what's interesting, since the Ramban, of course, lived before the age of computers, so he doesn't send back, erase this and add this. The easier way to do is to just add things. So we used to think that there were just a limited number of these additions from the Ramban's last years in Eretz Yisrael. But the Machon L'Hachsharat Morim, as part of Gush Atzion, Yossi Ofer and somebody else whose name escapes me now, published a sefer recently in which they showed hundreds of tikkunim. They showed that the Ramban sent hundreds of messages back from Eretz Yisrael to Spain to add to his Perush, and one of them is this one. Ulefi da'ati kitam haktuvim eino ela lahazkir kihi Eretz Canaan lo Eretz Plishtim. The sense you get is that that the Ramban in Spain understood that the Torah was trying to tell us that it was in Eretz Yisrael, but he wasn't convinced of it. Because there are Chitim and there's Efron and all these people, and what does that have to do with Eretz Yisrael? When the Ramban got here and he went to Chevron, he saw, no, this is part of Eretz Yisrael. The Torah is trying to make the point to all of us that you might have thought otherwise, but that she was buried in Eretz Yisrael. Now I'm skipping some lines in the Ramban. He says, "V'nichtava zot haparsha lahodia chastei Hashem im Avraham." What's the great goodness that God does with Avraham? Shehayan nisi Elokim ba'aretz asher ba lagur sham. First of all, it was coming true. The haftachot to Avraham were coming true because Avraham was in Nasi haaretz. He was really looked up to by the people who lived in Hebron. V'chol ha'am hayu karin lo Adoni. Right? People called him respectful terms. They related to him as somebody who deserved honor. V'hu lo amar lohem kain. He didn't act that way. Kishahayas sar gadol. Right? He didn't demand respect. V'gam b'chayav kiyem lo va'agadala shemecha v'hayei bracha. During his lifetime, this is a significant point. The Ramban says that you might have thought God made promises to Avraham. Lech l'chem yatzchem, right? And then you'll be great. V'hayei bracha va'agadala shemecha. Right? Amongst your children. Says the Ramban, no, it happened to Avraham himself. Avraham became a person who was respected, whose name was made great, and to whom people turned to for brachot. More than that, and this is here you feel the Ramban's love for Eretz Yisrael. V'ishto meita v'nikbera b'nachalat Hashem. Right? The Ramban thinks it's a significant idea, significant fact that Sarah was buried b'nachalat Hashem. Nachalat Hashem, not meaning Marat HaMachpelah, of course that's Nachalat Hashem, but meaning Eretz Yisrael. And we'll come back to this idea in a second. Va'od. Ki ratzah lahodienu makom kfurat ha'avod. Here's a significant point. It's unrelated to what came before. First of all, says the Ramban, you need to know that the story happened in Eretz Yisrael. Second of all, you need to see within the story the fulfillment of the beginning of the fulfillment of God's promises to Avraham, that he became va'avarcha mevarchecha u'mekalalcha ar v'nivrechu b'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama u'v'zarecha. Right? You have to see that these things were happening to Avraham. He became great. He was respected by everybody. He was v'hayei bracha. And the greatest bracha was that Sarah was buried in Eretz Yisrael, in Nachalat Hashem. Now interesting addition by the Ramban. Va'od. Ki ratzah lahodienu makom kfurat ha'avot. The Torah wants to tell us where Ma'arat HaMachpelah is. Ka'asher anachnu chayavim lechabed makom kfurat avotenu hakdoshim. We have, it's almost like a Chassidish of art, right? Says the Ramban, we have to show respect to the place where the Avot were buried. This is not just another place. It's not just Nachalat Hashem. It's more than that. V'rabotenu amru, shegam ze minhan. Okay, so far. So the first point is the first point, which is, why is the Torah giving us all the detail about Marat HaMachpelah? To tell us where Sarah, and eventually Avraham, and then Yitzchak and his wife, and Yaakov and his wives, and his wife, are going to be buried. Because that place, okay, it's not the Makom HaMikdash, but says the Ramban, where the Avot were buried is a place that for which we have to show respect. And it's not such a simple thing now, and it's very involved in politics and Jewish Arab relations. And when our yeshiva went to Hebron, we go for slichos every year. There are 10 days a year after the Baruch Goldstein incident in Hebron. There are 10 days a year in which Jews get to go into what's called Ohel Yitzchak, the biggest room in Marat HaMachpelah. It's clear that the Arabs got the better of the deal. It's a beautiful room with hundreds of chandeliers and what have you. But the sense you get is that we owe something in the Ramban. The sense you get, we owe something to the Avot. We owe the honor of the Makom to the Avot. And whatever part of it we have to treat respectfully. We have to treat with great reverence and with great honor. And the idea when you go to Marat HaMachpelah, the sense that you're going to someplace special, that's something we should all feel when we go. Okay. Next. This is related to the Ramban's love of Eretz Yisrael. And it's something I never noticed before, but it's a fascinating thing. Says the Pasuk. Okay, now Avraham is telling Eliezer to go to where he was born to get a wife for Yitzchak, and the pasuk says, "Va'ashpiacha b'Hashem Elokei hashamayim ve'Elokei haaretz, asher lo tikach isha livni b'midot haknani asher anochi yoshev b'kirbo." Right, I'm making you swear. Swear in what? B'Hashem Elokei hashamayim ve'Elokei haaretz, which you think to yourself certainly means the God of the heavens and the God of the earth. But the Ramban doesn't think so. The Ramban is an amazing pshat, which you have to listen carefully to see. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yikra Elokei Eretz Yisrael. Kidichsiv lo yaduat mishpat elokei haaretz. I'll read that again because I don't think it's obvious to people what he means. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yikra Elokei Eretz Yisrael. Says the Ramban, when it says Elokei Hashemayim Elokei Haaretz, it doesn't mean, as we normally think, the God of the heaven and the God of the earth. It means the God of the heaven and the God of Eretz Yisrael. Ve'elokei Haaretz. Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his direct providence is on Eretz Yisrael. V'katuv Va'idabru El Elokei Yerushalayim Ka'al Elokei Amei Haaretz. There's a difference between Elokei Hashemayim or Elokei Yerushalayim and Elokei Amei Haaretz. Of course, it's the same God, but it's a different idea, right? God is the God of Eretz Yisrael in the Ramban's philosophy in a much more direct way, in a different way than he's the God of Teaneck, New Jersey, or of Manhattan, or of Johannesburg, or of London, or any other place. V'yesh b'zeh sod od achtevenu be'ezrat Hashem. Okay, I'm going to tell you the secret, but we'll talk a little bit about the secret now. But here it goes. Aval b'pasuk lekachani m'beit avi lo ne'emar bo elokei haaretz ki haya b'charan o b'ur kasdim. Before Avraham comes on the scene, it says Elokei Hashemayim, but it doesn't say Elokei haaretz, because literally Avraham made HaKadosh Baruch Hu Elokei haaretz. Now, other Rishonim agree with that. Rashi in many places say, God, you were just Elokei Hashemayim. I made you Elokei haaretz. But the Ramban, makes it even clearer. No, it's not the God of the entire globe. It's that God is the God of Eretz Yisrael in a much more direct way. I don't want to say, God forbid, that God is not the God of Chutz La'aretz. Of course he's the God of Chutz La'aretz. But there's something much more significant about his godship over Eretz Yisrael than it is over Chutz La'aretz. And the Ramban makes the point here, and he says, V'chein amru, hadar b'chutz la'aretz, domeh k'mi she'ein lo eloka. Right? Chazal say, a person who lives in Chutz La'aretz, it's as if, in some way, he doesn't have a God. Shenemar, pasuk about David HaMelech, Ki gershuni hayom mehistapeach benachalat Hashem. They chased me out of the land, of God's land. Lemor, lech avod Elohim acherim. Go worship another God. So the fact of the matter is, they didn't say go worship another God. They just kicked him out of Eretz Yisrael. But say the Mefarshim, no, David HaMelech understood. If I don't live in Eretz Yisrael, if I don't live with a direct relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hashkacha pratis is indirect and not direct, it's equivalent to rejecting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, I want to be careful how I say this, because everybody's heard the phrase before, right? Kol hadar b'chutz la'aretz k'mi she'ein lo eloka, and Rashi quotes it. A lot of people quote it, right? It's well known. But I think the Ramban takes it seriously in a way that other people don't. Right? Not literally. Of course it's the case that people daven in Chutz La'aretz. Of course it's the case that people put on tefillin in Chutz La'aretz. Of course, that's of course true. But the fact of the matter is, if you believe in the Ramban's idea, not just that Eretz Yisrael is the mivchar ha'aratzot. Well, of course that's true. Everybody agrees in that. But that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's a difference in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hashkacha in Eretz Yisrael than it is in Chutz La'aretz. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu's divine providence is direct in Eretz Yisrael and it's indirect in Chutz La'aretz, then when you live in Eretz Yisrael, you feel God's presence in a way that you can't in Chutz La'aretz. And it just reminds me of a story. Rav Lichtzing once told me, he picked up, right after he made Aliyah, he picked up Rav Hutner from the airport. Rav Hutner used to come for the summers. And it was the afternoon, and Rav Hutner said to him, can we go someplace where I can put on tefillin? So Rav Ayan said to me, but didn't you daven on the plane? Didn't you daven Shabbat? So he said, yeah. He said, but that was the tefillin of Chutz La'aretz. Now I want to put a tefillin of Eretz Yisrael. Right? The idea being that you do mitzvos in Chutz La'aretz. It's true. But the mitzvos have more religious significance. The mitzvos have more impact if you do it in Eretz Yisrael. Okay? But that's a significant point because it comes up all the time. Hashem Elokei Hashemayim Elokei Haaretz. The Ramban says Elokei Haaretz means Eretz Yisrael. Okay, we're in a bit of a rush today. Let's do one more. Let's go to the end of the parsha. And this is really, it's a significant moral point, and it's something that we should try to take to heart. At the end of the parsha, after Yitzchak is married, after Avraham basically has all of his worldly needs fulfilled, the Torah tells us as follows. It is Chayei, Pasuk Chet. Says the Torah, Vayigva vayamat Avraham b'seva tova zakein v'saveya vayeasef elamav. Avraham died b'seva tova at a good old age. Zakein v'saveya. The Ramban is fascinating. What does it mean, zakein v'saveya? So he says, exactly what we would think. Shera'a kol mishalot libo v'sava kol tova. Right? Avraham, as an old man, looked back on his life and saw his accomplishments, and saw all the good things that happened to him, and saw the impact he had on the world, and he felt good. I'd say he felt proud of himself. He felt like he led a significant life, a life of content. V'chein v'sava yamim. Similarly, the phrase sva yamim, shesava nafsho bayamim, v'lo yit'aveh sheyidchadshu bo hayamim davar. Right? To die happy, to die content, to die fulfilled means you accomplished your purpose on this earth. It's really an amazing idea. It's an amazing gift that Avraham Avinu at the end of his life, it's not just that he did it, but he knew that he did it. Ukinyan shenamar b'David vayamat b'seva tova sva yamim. David HaMelech, the same thing happened to him. It's not that David HaMelech lived so long. It's not that Avraham Avinu lived so long, 180 years, 175 or 180. I think Avraham Avinu lived 175 years. He could have lived 180. Okay, at that time, people lived that long. It wasn't that he thought to himself, wow, I've lived so long. It's that I've lived so full. I've lived such a full life, such a meaningful life. V'hu sipur. Now, how does that happen? Now Ramban editorializes it, but it's an amazing point. V'hu sipur chastei Hashem bat tzadikim u'midat tova bahem. It is one of the great character traits of tzadikim. What is it? Shelo yit'avu b'moterot. They don't desire more than they need. It doesn't mean that tzadikim are happy being poor, but tzadikim are happy with what they have. And that's a significant point. Kinyan shenemar bohem tavat libo natatalo. V'lo kimo shenemar bishar ha'anashim ohev kesef lo yispa kesef. Right? A person who loves money can never ever have enough money. That's frustrating, because such a person could never ever die zakenu sva yamim. He could never feel like he had a complete full life, because he wants more. Va'amrubo ein adam yotzei min ha'olam v'chatzi ta'avotav biyado. Chazal say, the average person dies and would tell you, I didn't accomplish half the things I wanted to accomplish. I didn't get half the things I desired. Yesh biyado maneh, this is really mean. Yesh biyado maneh, he has 100. Mitaveh matayim, so he wants 200. He siga yado l'matayim. Mitaveh la'asoto arba meyot. He desires 400, not just 200. Shenemar, oev kesef lo yispa kesef. Ubereshis rabba amru HaKadosh Baruch Hu, mareh lahem latzadikim matan scharan shu atid litein. This is a different point. We'll come to it in a second. So, Chazal basically say, it's not just, the way I see it, yes, objectively, Avraham had an incredibly accomplished life, an incredibly fulfilling life, and he died knowing that he had accomplished all these things in his life. But then the Ramban says, broadly speaking, that's something that most of us don't have, and most of us don't have it because we're not tzaddikim, and because we're regular people, and regular people want more. Right? Sometimes you read books about people like this. You know, he's wildly successful in his life, and yet he risked it all at the end of his life on some real estate deal that went bad. Why did he risk it all? Because ohev kesef lo yispa kesef. Because literally, I don't want to be motzi, speak lashon hara about anybody. I'm thinking of a specific situation from a long time ago, where literally the family had $1 billion, but they risked it all on a real estate project because they wanted $2 billion, because they wanted $3 billion. That's what the Ramban would say. Because when the way you judge your success is monetary, then you're on a treadmill. You're on an endless, process in which you can never ever have enough. I think Elon Musk is trying to make much more money now. He has hundreds of billions of dollars. I'm not saying he has to retire. If he wants to do a good thing, he should do a good thing. But why the desire for more money? Why does he need more money? And the answer is it's in our human nature. It's oev kesef lo yispa kesef. And so, in our world, a person who makes more money immediately builds a bigger house, knocks down his old house, builds a bigger house. Why? He wants to project to people that he has more money, and other people are impressed by that, and other people are taken by it, and they say, wow, that's really great. And says the Ramban, or implies the Ramban strongly, that that's the difference between us, not praiseworthy people, and tzaddikim. We need to overcome that. We need to be the kind of people like Avraham Avinu, that you could die zaken usva yamim. You could die with a sense of accomplishment, not the focus on, well, I only have X and I wanted 2X, but the focus of, this is what I left behind. This is the impact I made on the world. I turned HaKadosh Baruch Hu into something from something theoretical to something actual, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu just used to be Elokei HaShamayim, and now he's Elokei Haaretz. That's much more significant. That's much more valuable. That's much more meaningful than more and more and more money, right? You need money. You need a significant amount of money to support your family, to send your kids to yeshiva, to do all the things that you have to do. But beyond that, right, it's a psychological point. Beyond that, it's just ego. And the Ramban says the ego is going to get in the way of your happiness at the end of your life. And it's much better to feel satisfied. It's much better to be a mistapek bimuat. And you meet these people all the time and you're so impressed by them. They're not overwhelmed by your wealth. They don't care. I'm not saying they disrespect it. I'm sure they're happy for you. But their values define their life, and who they are and what they do is much more important than what they amassed in their lives. And I feel like that's just a really, really significant lesson for us who sometimes or often are nichshal in the opposite. And says the Ramban, that's not how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be like the Avot. We're supposed to put a number of Ramans together. We're supposed to respect Marat HaMachpelah as the burial place for the Avot, and we're supposed to respect what they stood for, right? Not, God forbid, I live in Chutz La'aretz, so I don't have HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even if I live in Chutz La'aretz, as I suppose many, if not most of you do, I have to fight harder to have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I have to fight harder to find meaning in my life and my values, and not just in the amount of money in my bank account, right? No one's against having money in your bank account, but I need to judge myself and my life in a better way. I need to be the kind of person who could die as Avraham died, zaken usfa yamim, fully satisfied, fully fulfilled. That's the dream. That's what we hope for in our own lives. God willing, all of us should be zocher for that. That's it for today. Yashkach to everybody, and God willing, see you next Shabbat. Not on Shabbat, but you get it. Bye-bye.